We've been in a pretty good period of consolidation now for quite some time. This zone has stretched for over a month, and I know it might not look like it if we just look at the chart, but this is exactly what we've been very, very used to throughout the entire market cycle, right? So now, when it comes to the idea of Bitcoin potentially breaching those all-time highs and doing something quite substantial, I don't think that this is a particularly difficult kind of set of questions to answer, but we'll definitely be tackling them in this video right here. Now, if you are excited, do me a favor and smash up those likes here as you do come into this YouTube video. And, of course, check out the link right down here to 𝗙𝗟𝗟𝗡. When you do sign up to 𝗙𝗟𝗟𝗡 using this link right here, you're going to be getting exclusive chart updates from the team. We've been posting there for weeks now with lots and lots of cool stuff there that nobody else has seen. So check that out if you are interested. But here's the thing. Bitcoin has been going sideways now for a little bit of time. Its entire trend has been, sideways followed by a big pump up. We can demonstrate this quite easily with a nice line right here, another line right here. This one obviously slopes downwards a little bit, but broadly the same. And then we had a sideways here, followed by a sideways here, and another sideways up here. And I think this is really important because as far as kind of predictable price action goes, this is indeed very predictable. The only thing that makes it difficult is that if you're living in it as opposed to studying it historically, it's really, really going to fuck up your headspace because it's so slow, okay? And when things are slow like this, you're typically going to be really, really struggling to, get a grip of what's going on because you're just looking at things on smaller time frames and not really getting it, right? But of course, that's what this YouTube channel is here for. You're not going to be making that mistake as you watch this YouTube channel, and that's obviously what we really pride ourselves on. Again, if you do appreciate that, do us a favor and just smash up those likes and subscribe as you are coming in here. Now, this is really looking like a bit of a kind of bull flag pattern to me at this stage. It was starting out a little bit more like a classic kind of parallel channel, which, is definitely still in play. I definitely feel like Bitcoin could kind of, get up kind of to the top of this range and, kind of come back down. But I think if we zoom out just a touch onto the daily here, we're definitely starting to see something that looks a little bit more like that at this stage now. And this is particularly interesting because of the S&P 500. We'll get to this in just a second here. But, this is clearly a bit of price action that's kind of coiling up, getting ready to explode. This is quite normal when things are actually getting ready to explode. If we take a look at what happened down here, there was actually a really, really good long setup that I was so close to taking it. I didn't even talk about it publicly. I was so upset about it. I was so close to taking it, but I just wanted like $1,000 better entry. That was like the Indian inside of me that was being greedy. And then unfortunately, I missed the whole damn thing because of it. But same thing here, right? You're getting this pressure really starting to coil up when the market is, essentially just ready. I mean, it had, essentially front ran the 72K support level, 70K support level. It only fell down to 74, and it was kind of just ready to go. And so this pressure started to coil up a little bit. We had lower highs and higher lows, and then it exploded upwards. And we're definitely, I think, painting, more or less the same thing right now on this chart. And the reason I'm saying that is, like I said, I think the S&P 500 really kind of validates this analysis. Now, obviously, it's not trading anymore because actually it should be trading. I don't know why. Yeah, it is trading, but it's not got long left, only an hour and 20. But, as far as a kind of weekly open goes, I feel like this one was pretty good. It was a nice big kind of jump up, at least in, relative terms, it was pretty decent. It puts the S&P 500 kind of back at the top of the range here, right? So I think that's definitely really, really cool. Gold itself has been dropping down, which is interesting because we're expecting, precious metals and, especially these kind of safe haven assets to kind of go up quite a lot if there was going to be conflict in the Middle East, for example. However, it doesn't seem like the markets really care. And this is something that we were talking about on Twitter as well, okay? For those of you who don't follow me personally on Twitter, then check it out with this link in the description down below. And essentially what I said down there in Twitter is that, Bitcoin is holding up incredibly well. I mean, I do want to remind you guys, obviously, I made this point in the last video as well, that, Elon and Trump had some pretty serious beef on June 5th, which was right here. And the market didn't care. I mean, the low that it set down here was $100,000, and now we're back up at 108, and I don't know, like that might feel like a significant bit of price tag. I still haven't upgraded my trading view. I need to get around to doing that. And by the way, this goes to show. I always tell people that they need the paid plan of trading view because it makes sense to be serious. But the other side of this that I've always said for all these years as well is that you don't need to do anything particularly complex with your analysis. Okay, the free version of trading view gives you everything that you need in order to kind of analyze the markets. It's just that there are extra bits that you're gonna need on occasion, and if you can't have them because you don't want to put up $50 a month, then what it probably means is that you shouldn't be trading, right? It probably just means you don't have enough money to be in the markets. Anyone can get in the markets, but it should make sense, right? The numbers should make sense. So that was the point I always made, but also just how we've got to keep it simple anyway. Really, really important stuff there. But pardon me there, ladies and gents. Bringing it back here, look, this might feel like a kind of big price range for you guys, but it is just 8%, okay? And we shouldn't get carried away. This is not that big. Bitcoin, for the most part, especially over this kind of period, if we go ahead and kind of put a fixed range volume profile on the whole chart, most of its trading has essentially happened at 103.5 because of this point of control, and that's massively skewed by this data. If we bring it to much more recent price action, this number goes up a little bit to about 105, and really most of the trading, the bottom quartile and the top quartile right here, the top 25, bottom 25, most of it's happening inside of 4%. I don't know if I phrased that properly, but what I'm saying is that if my understanding of this stuff is correct, most of the trading has happened in this range, and obviously, that looks like it's correct because the histogram agrees with me there. So lots and lots of trading happening within a super, super tight range, and the reason I'm pointing that out is we did have Elon literally calling Trump a pedophile, pretty much. I mean, allegedly, whatever. I mean, it wasn't literal because he only said he was in the Epstein files. I'm sure completely normal people are in there too, of course, but we do have that happen, and then we have, of course, Israel and Iran bombing the shit out of each other, and and with all of that, the S&P is opening up and gold is dropping down. So it doesn't look like the markets are particularly concerned about this stuff. And look, I might be reading this wrong, but in my experience, I've been doing this for over 8 years now. If you're going to get a situation in the markets where you really should be dumping down because some really nasty shit is happening, but instead the market either stays up stays sideways or goes up, in either of those two situations, if you're having these two outcomes when the market should instead be dumping because the news is really bad, but instead you're sideways or instead you're going up, that is a really strong sign of strength, okay? Because what happens when these shit factors are not at play anymore? I mean, look, you could be a pessimist and say that this war is going to drag on forever, and there's probably some really good reasons to be saying that at this stage, but I don't think that most people read any of these things correctly. I think everything is like way more boring in real life than we kind of hype shit up to be or drum shit up to be in real life, right? Like I feel like I mean, there's tons of examples, but you're gonna understand what I mean. We're gonna anticipate things and hype things up to be kind of at a different level to where they actually are in real life, and and I think that's really, really important to kind of be humble enough to admit that, because that's gonna save you from a lot of mistakes down the line. But for sure, I think that we're doing incredibly well in light of kind of global events right now, and with Bitcoin approaching that all-time high, all we have to do really is get above this kind of downward sloping resistance line, which puts our resistance right now at about 110, basically 109.5. As far as resistance goes for Bitcoin. Bitcoin's dominance has been looking pretty good, though. I mean, it's been able to hold. We'll get back to normal BTC analysis in a minute. There's a lot more to go through, but Bitcoin dominance has been looking pretty decent, ladies and gents. It's held on really, really well. It's seen a couple of drops, and it's recovered all of them pretty quickly. This one, admittedly, was a little bit slower, but still pretty quick. To me, definitely indicating that this thing could be getting ready to set new highs later on as well. So that's going to be something that we'll be keeping an eye out for. Ethereum against the dollar, is probably just going to be lagging behind Bitcoin a little bit. I know that against Bitcoin, it's actually been looking pretty decent here. Again, on the daily, this is definitely indicating that it wants to explode upwards at this stage. I think the risk is still very, very high because look at the downtrend that it's in. Like I said, I think that Bitcoin dominance is going to be setting a new high. So, Ethereum, Bitcoin is probably going to suffer a little bit if that does happen. But at the same time, I mean, there are mixed signals here. Hey, what's up, Ghost? You all right, mate? There you go. I think that there's definitely some some real cause for this chart to go up as well. Like I said, mixed signals. It's not good enough for me right now to love it, but I'll tell you what is pretty good now. Some of these coins have come down to some really nice levels to kind of reset themselves, right? Like, I don't really see this being a bad entry on Trump coin in the super long term, right? I mean, short term, is it possible? What am I looking for? Where's my here, right here? Actually, no, we're going to use a rectangle. I want to show you, this kind of support level down here at kind of like $10 flat for Trump. Pretty decent level, not crazy, not amazing, but, decent for sure. We dipped below it a little bit in April and haven't been back below it since. We've obviously kind of flirted with that idea recently on the Trump-Elon fight day, but if this thing does end up dropping at this stage, there's still definitely some possibility for fake outs. I don't really see it kind of doing a long-term thing down here, but that could definitely happen, and I wouldn't, rule it out completely either. I just think it's one of those things that we've got to keep an eye out for. But what it does mean is, this and other charts that we'll be going through later on in this video are now starting to look like they've got some kind of decent setups starting to line up here. So that doesn't mean that there's anything at play necessarily, but it is definitely something that I think is at least just worth keeping an eye out for at this stage, because if this does end up working out, we are looking at some pretty decent, opportunities for some gains right here. If I can just find the bottom of this ridiculously large long and short tool. Let's go ahead and kind of and see what some numbers could look like. And obviously, this is exactly the kind of thing that we do tend to post inside of 𝗙𝗢𝗟𝗟𝗢𝗪 right here. So those of you that are signed up to 𝗙𝗙𝗟𝗟𝗙𝗪𝗟, you're going to be able to see all of these chart updates, and we've been throwing tons in there along similar kind of lines to this right here. So like actionable stuff that actually is relevant to the market right now. It's only being posted there. So if you like what we're putting out on this channel, I mean, we've not made a video on this channel for maybe a week at this stage, but 𝗙𝗙𝗟𝗟𝗙𝗪𝗟 keeps getting posts. So definitely check it out if you are interested in that. It is of course completely free. And by the way, it's just a solid exchange all around. I mean, it's an exchange that you're used to. You're going to get a huge sign-up bonus when you start trading. They're going to be matching your deposits up to 5K, which is pretty crazy. You just get more free money you can trade with. If you choose to use the exchange or not, that's going to be up to you. But it's also got, a lot of the things that you're used to as far as kind of, proof of reserves and good liquidity and stuff like that. So definitely worth checking out. But, as far as kind of a stop goes, I mean, look, this is pretty decent. This is an 11%, wide stop. I think it's honestly way too wide. I think another pretty decent stop is honestly going to be, kind of like $9.22 over here. That's still 5% wide. And, as far as highs go, I mean, you can be conservative with it. You can kind of target $11. That's going to give a 2.5 risk to reward, but pretty reasonable, I think, to target $12.50. Then you're looking at a 5.2 risk to reward, 27% on the upside. And obviously, I think the real target is going to be more like $15, because if this is essentially going to be the point where Bitcoin starts to break out, then even though altcoins are probably going to move a little bit slower than Bitcoin, we're going to probably see Bitcoin's dominance continue to go up, as we've seen for the last 2 years non-stop, ladies and gents. There's a lot of people that disagree with me on this, but it has been non-stop. It would still probably allow for some nice room for gains here. And I think the reason that I like this more than Bitcoin, for example, is that it's just cleaner. It's just more obvious where the setup is. It's at a nice round number. It's a relevant, political figure. So there's a lot of news we can kind of use to understand the market and stuff like that. Not that I think that's a smart idea at all, but a lot of people will be doing it. So, I can kind of use that to my advantage. So there's a lot at play here. And like I said, this is the kind of thing that's going to be posted in 𝗙𝗙𝗟𝗟𝗙𝗪𝗟. Definitely check that out if you are interested. But bringing it back to Bitcoin here, let's just analyze this chart a little bit more here. We've got this kind of midpoint, at like 105, and I think this is definitely an interesting level for Bitcoin. We've now risen above it. So this could definitely start to act as a little bit of support if Bitcoin does end up coming back down, which I think is absolutely great news. And as far as some of our kind of indicators go, I do want to take a look at the Ichimoku cloud very, very quickly here on the 4-hour time frame. All right, so 4-hour, not really really showing us a whole lot, to be honest. Nothing that I'm particularly interested in right here on the 4 hour. It definitely looks like, you know, it's just kind of lost meaning because of the sideways trading here. But on the daily time frame, definitely a ton of support for Bitcoin if it does end up kind of tumbling back down. And I think this is something that I actually should have spoken about a little bit earlier on in the video, to be honest, which is just the idea that now, you know, Bitcoin has done so well up until this point that it really can drop down and it's just going to have so much support. And this has been true for a while. It was also true back here, although it didn't quite work out for Bitcoin. But now we've really kind of filled out all of these price ranges, you know, like there's price action that spans all the way down to the bottom of this cloud right here, all the way up to the top of this cloud, and of course more below. So just tons and tons and tons of kind of levels on this chart now that Bitcoin can use to its advantage. And again, when we're seeing that in the context of a kind of bullish posture on the S&P 500, that's going to be a really big sign to me of what's to come potentially, as far as, you know, definitely seeing some nice opportunities in the market for some bigger explosions at this stage here. So I'm definitely, you know, looking forward to that in this market. You know, as far as kind of the market breaking up and getting to new all-time highs, I feel like this is it, right? I mean, you know, we've noticed that it's kind of been, you know, 15% up and then consolidation and then 15% up and then consolidation. And then in this case, we went, you know, maybe slightly higher depending on how you kind of measure it. You know, but we've definitely had, like I said at the very beginning of this video now, at this point, over 30 days of consolidation inside of a bullish environment, inside of an environment where, you know, bearish news is not affecting us very much. You know, to me, that's a really surefire sign that we're going to be getting a more substantial breakout soon, because at first I think that we're going to be getting a breakout, but you couple that with the fact that we've been consolidating and, you know, we're just kind of lined up for it now. You know, to me, I feel like this could go quite high. I mean, how high? I don't know. I have no way of knowing, but, you know, if we're going to do the kind of standard 15% up, which we've already kind of calculated, I mean, you know, that can put us in the 110 to 120 bracket. That can put us in the, you know, 120 plus bracket. I really don't know, and it's really hard to say. I'm leaning more toward, you know, a more explosive price action kind of move at this stage. You know, we haven't really had one for a long time. Nobody's expecting one. Everybody's depressed. It's the perfect time to rip it, you know, and then let a lot of people kind of buy in at the top again. So I feel, you know, over 120 is definitely super doable at this stage, just given how suppressed the market has been. These coins are at, you know, really, really good levels. Here it's XRP, seeing a really nice big bounce off this tried and tested support level down here at $2.09 here. This is, I believe, I'm pretty sure we've been posting about this in LevX as well. Yeah, but you know, look, if there's a little bit of a drop here, it's still kind of in really, really good hands, and it's still poised to, you know, get to, you know, $6-7, whatever. So I definitely think that there's a ton of opportunity in these markets really brewing and getting ready to erupt. Honestly, quite exciting, ladies and gents, for me. I don't know about you guys, but, you know, I think that a lot of people, you know, they're very muted in terms of how they feel about these markets now because of how negative their experiences have been. But you know, that it doesn't matter. I mean, the market is still doing what it's doing, and the market's not as fucked as people want it to be. It's really not. You know, I think these people are just, you know, like I said, they're getting lost in the small time frames, and that's what makes it difficult. But, you know, if you do just kind of step back and, you know, keep your head planted on your shoulders, you know, it is going to be pretty clear that this is just, you know, a stable. It's actually kind of an aggressive uptrend, to be honest. But definitely a stable uptrend as far as kind of Bitcoin performance goes, right? Like, this is not stable. This is, you know, pretty aggressive, quick parabola type price action, right? Like exponentially kind of going up super, super quick. Here, ladies and gents, I mean, you know, we're just taking it nice and easy. I mean, it's an aggressive, you know, it's still an aggressive trend, which, you know, like I said, I think a lot of people are going to dislike me for saying that, but that's not going to change the facts, ladies and gents. It is still aggressive, but, you know, controlled. I mean, you know, it's pulling back on schedule. It's kind of, you know, consolidating on schedule and all that good stuff. So, you know, look, 8 years plus in this game, you're not going to knock me out of this shit. You know, I'm not worried about this market at the moment. I'll tell you if I feel worried, but I'm not worried yet. You know, I feel like everything's still, you know, definitely pointing very, very up. I think we're all going to make a lot of money, ladies and gents. That's how I feel about this. But ladies and gents, there you go. Hope you've enjoyed this one. You know what to do. If you have, smash up those likes, subscribe, tick the bell. Check out the beautiful partners of the channel down in the description below. And if you want to get inside of our super exclusive program that lasts 12 weeks, it will completely transform you in this game. We've had incredible results. Absolutely nobody that joined this program has walked away with anything less than stellar performance and stellar results. They've all paid off the fee, many times over pretty quickly after joining as well. Still no exceptions. Like I said, someone's going to fuck this up. Someone's going to join this program and do badly. That's why we, select carefully, obviously, but it hasn't happened yet, so I think that's pretty cool. If you want to get some information about it, you can reach out directly with this link on screen right here. With that, ladies and gents, it's been an amazing one. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you all in the next one. Cheers.